and for mediation. So let me ask you then, because mediation is hugely important now in a war that threatens Europe. This new strategy describes Russia as an adversary, does not describe Russia as an adversary, but it does say that an expeditious cessation of hostilities in Ukraine is a core interest of the United States. The goal of a peace deal would be to re-establish strategic stability with Russia and to enable Ukraine's survival as a viable state. How do you read that, given the current negotiations that are going on to try and end this war?
You know, when you're a European, you are constantly asked for what the President of the United States says or what is the foreign policy of the United States. And I think that what we should really be interested right now in Europe is what we can do in this very challenging moment in world history, in which for some countries, one of them is Russia, war has become a normal tool of foreign policy. It's not the only one. In the Middle East, Israel thinks exactly the same way. We think the opposite. We stick to the UN Charter. We think that war is not a way of settling disputes among people or states, and above all, that a war of aggression cannot have reward. What is at stake right now in Ukraine is, of course, the sovereignty and the territorial integrity of Ukrainian people, which is already huge. We are talking about a democratic state with a democratically elected government. But we are going to design with whatever peace will come one day, and I'm sure that there is a future in peace for the Ukrainian people, we are to design the future security scheme of Europe and also of the world. If a war of aggression has a reward, tomorrow's war, and certainly tomorrow's Europe, is going to be more unstable. Mm-hmm. No one will be out of the risk of waking up and realizing that a strong neighbor wants a part of its sovereignty or of its territorial integrity. So we welcome the efforts of peace of the President of the United States. We think it's good. We have been asking for peace since the very beginning. If it was up to us, the Europeans, or to the Ukrainians, this war would have not started. We want peace. We just want to make sure that it's a just and lasting peace. Just and lasting peace means that there is no reward for the aggression, that there is a sovereign Ukraine that can take its own decision, including which international organization is a part of, and that at the end, that peace is stick to the United Nations Charter.
Can I quickly ask you while I have you here? The US is pretty angry at Spain because you have refused point blank to raise your military spending to 5% of your GDP. I asked your Prime Minister about it, and he had all sorts of reasons. Can you explain where you, as Spain, as a southern European nation, where do you see your biggest threat? And is it not Russia? Why would you not raise your GDP?
We acknowledge that Russia is right now, by far, the largest threat to European security. There is a war of aggression going on European soil. There are other threats that come also from the south, and we have great partners from Mauritania to Jordan. Turkey, it's a key element in NATO and in our southern flank security, and we acknowledge it for that. Spain is a reliable ally in NATO, and it's a vital ally in NATO. We have a historical deployment of soldiers, aeroplanes, ships in the eastern flank. It's more than 2,000 soldiers. The air security of the Baltic states is guaranteed also because of our airplanes. We've been in Iceland. We are right now in Latvia, in Lithuania. We have soldiers in Slovakia, in Romania, and we are going to meet, as we have always done, all the commitments that NATO has asked to Spain when it comes to capacities. The only thing is that we can do that with 2.1% of our GDP. We don't need to do it with 5%. So the important is not how much you're spending, is are you giving the capacities that you are being asked for the organization? Yes, we are doing it. And our deployment is at our historical height.
Foreign Minister Al-Thani, part of the national security strategy that just came up, basically a line said that Washington's, and I don't know, I hope I don't get this wrong, but Washington's hectoring of Gulf monarchies has got to stop. How do you, I mean, that must be welcome to your ears, obviously, because it doesn't really talk about human rights and democracy, but it does talk about a lot of what we know that President Trump has always talked about, which is the economy, investment, business, transactions, those kinds of things. You've sat with a lot of US negotiators. You recently, most recently over the Israel ceasefire in Gaza with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. How does that type of negotiation differ from potentially your interlocutors before?
Well, actually, it's first of all, I think that each conflict has its own nature, and we cannot compare like what's the mediation, for example, between the U.S. and Afghanistan to the mediation between Israel and Hamas that happened recently. And basically, what we have seen as a challenge in the recent mediation in Gaza was that there were only the U.S. as part of mediation. They were only talking to one party, which is the Israelis. But in the recent rounds of the negotiations, they started engaging with both parties, which has helped us in making breakthroughs in these negotiations and achieving the ceasefire at that time. The difference, of course, between one administration to another, it's been always there. Like it's not, you cannot see one method that's followed by every administration. But what we have seen throughout the mediation process is an engagement and a willingness to push to the finish line, to get it done, and not to keep it open. Now we are at a critical moment. It's not yet there. So it's what we have just done is a pause. We cannot consider it yet a ceasefire. A ceasefire cannot be completed unless there is a full withdrawal of the Israeli forces, there is stability back in Gaza, people can go in and out, which is not the case today. Right now, us as Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, together with the United States, we are getting together in order to force the way forward for the next phase. And this next phase is just also temporary from our perspective, because at the end of the day, if we are looking at, if we are just resolving what happened in Gaza, the catastrophe that happened in the last 2 years, it's not enough, because there is a root for this conflict. And this conflict is not only about Gaza, it's about the West Bank, it's about the rights of the Palestinians for their states. So we are hoping that we can work together with the US administration to achieve this vision at the end of the day. It's not easy. It will have a lot of challenges. It will face a lot of attacks. But we will keep pushing in order to find, at the end of the day, a long-lasting solution that provides justice for both people.
In the ceasefire agreement and in the 20-point plan for Israel-Gaza, there was an indication that there would be an effort to move towards a Palestinian state. For the second time this year, the Israeli Knesset basically, well, they don't want that to happen, and actually Prime Minister Netanyahu and his far-right allies boycotted a vote that was to move the phases along because of the reference in the plan to the two-state solution. When you're talking about mediation, how do you get beyond that kind of ideology? How do you get beyond the hard, liners who don't want even what President Trump has put forward?
Well, actually, here where the enforcement is needed, because one of the lessons learned that we have seen and experienced throughout the last 2 years, that if accountability is absent and enforcement is absent, things can just keep going and we remain hostage in the hands of the extremists. And that's what we want to avoid. And we have seen that the efforts that all of us, we put together in order to reach to the ceasefire that we have achieved this year, needed for the next phase, which is the stabilization, and then the third phase, which is the Palestinian state. If this extremist agenda will just, overshadow all our efforts as an international community, then everyone is recognizing that there is something wrong with the structure that we are working through. And I believe that U.S. role is key in this because U.S. has the enforcement part of that in order to put this conflict on the right track for a resolution.
Foreign Minister Fidan, I want to ask you about this because it's also about a stabilization force. The UN Security Council, I think for the first time in my memory, well, recent memory, with consensus and unanimity, voted for the Trump peace plan. One of the main objectives early on is a stabilization force. What can you tell us about how that's going to get beyond the blocks? I mean, first of all, Hamas is still not demilitarized, and there is a de facto partition inside Gaza, the so-called yellow line. And as we've seen and we've heard from Foreign Minister, there's no movement towards this second phase. I mean, is Turkey willing to put troops on the ground for a stabilization force? Would that be acceptable to any party?
Well, first of all, Turkey is ready and willing to do whatever it takes for us to contribute to the ongoing peace efforts that everybody is collectively contributing. And in terms